ExamPrep.School. Missouri Casualty Insurance Producer Exam, Exam Code 53. There are 4 practice exams in this series. This video covers Practice Exam 1. The first 20 questions are free. In this video, we will be covering the following major categories for Practice Exam 1. Insurance terms and related concepts. Missouri statutes, Chach rules common to all lines. Missouri statutes, Junge rules, pertinent to casualty only. Policy provisions. Types of policies, bonds, and related terms. Let's walk through the format. I'll read each question and its choices. Let's get started. Question 1. According to the Standard Commercial General Liability CGL policy, the term bodily injury encompasses which of the following? A. Physical injury only. B. Financial loss resulting from bodily harm. C. Mental anguish, emotional distress, or defamation without physical harm. D. Physical injury, sickness, or disease, including death. A countdown circle appears in the top right. Once it completes, the answer is revealed. You can pause at any time if you'd like longer to think. If you'd like additional practice covering more topics, see the description for our book. The correct answer is D. The standard CGL policy defines bodily injury as physical harm, sickness, or disease, including death, arising from an insured's operations or premises. Reason A is not correct. This choice omits sickness, disease, and death, which are part of the definition. Reason B is not correct. Financial losses are not included in the bodily injury definition. Reason C is not correct. Emotional or reputational harms without physical injury are not covered under bodily injury. Question 2. Under the standard CGL policy, property damage includes which of the following scenarios? A. Damage to the insured's own business equipment. B. Diminished value from wear and tear over time. C. Economic loss due to market fluctuations without physical loss. D. Physical injury to tangible property, including resulting loss of use. The correct answer is D. The CGL policy defines property damage as physical injury to tangible property, including any loss of use of that property that results from the physical injury. Reason A is not correct. Coverage applies to third-party property, not the insured's own equipment. Reason B is not correct. Wear and tear is a maintenance issue and is not covered as property damage. Reason C is not correct. Pure economic losses without physical injury are excluded. Question 3. Under a claims-made CGL policy form, coverage is triggered by which event? A. The date the bodily injury occurs, SE. B. The date the policy was first issued. C. The date the claim is made during the policy period. D. The date of an insured's inception to date exposure. The correct answer is C. A claims-made form triggers coverage when a claim is first made and reported to the insurer during the policy period, regardless of when the event occurred. Reason A is not correct. That trigger describes an occurrence form, not a claims-made form. Reason B is not correct. Policy issuance date does not determine the trigger for a claims-made form. Reason D is not correct. Loss exposure history is unrelated to the claims-made reporting trigger. Question 4. In commercial general liability insurance, which statement correctly distinguishes a per-occurrence limit from a general aggregate limit? A. The general aggregate limit is always higher than the per-occurrence limit. B. The per-occurrence limit applies to all claims collectively, while the general aggregate limit applies to each individual claim. C. The general aggregate limit replenishes automatically after each occurrence, but the per-occurrence limit does not. D. The per-occurrence limit is the maximum amount payable for any one claim, while the general aggregate limit is the total payable for all claims during the policy period. The correct answer is D. The per-occurrence limit caps payment for a single loss, whereas the general aggregate limit caps total payments for all losses within the policy term. Reason A is not correct. There is no requirement that the aggregate limit exceed the per occurrence limit. Reason B is not correct. This reverses the definitions of the two limits. Reason C is not correct. Neither limit automatically replenishes during the policy period. Question 5. XYZ. Manufacturing has a CGL policy with a $1 million per occurrence limit, a $2 million general aggregate limit, and a $2 million products completed operations aggregate limit. After paying 3 bodily injury claims arising from its finished products, which limit will apply to any further claims for those products during the policy period? A. Per occurrence limit. B. Products completed operations aggregate limit. C. General aggregate limit. D. Personal and advertising injury aggregate limit. The correct answer is B. The products completed operations aggregate sets the total amount the insurer will pay for all claims arising from products and completed operations exposures during the policy period, so it governs further claims for those finished products. Reason A is not correct. The per occurrence limit caps each individual claim but does not apply to cumulative claims for finished products. Reason C is not correct. The general aggregate limit applies to premises and operations exposures, not to products hazard exposures. Reason D is not correct. The personal and advertising injury aggregate limit pertains to non-physical injury offenses, not product liability. Question 6. During a community fair held on its parking lot, a vendor accidentally spills oil that causes a visitor to slip and injure a wrist. Under the premises and operations exposure of a CGL policy, this scenario illustrates what kind of liability exposure? A. Professional liability exposure. B. Products completed operations exposure. C. Personal and advertising injury exposure. D. Premises and operations exposure. The correct answer is D. A slip and fall on the insured's premises during ongoing operations is a classic premises and operations liability exposure under the CGL policy. Reason A is not correct. Professional liability exposure applies to allegations of errors in professional services, not to a slip and fall on premises. Reason B is not correct. Products completed operations covers risks related to goods sold or work finished, not incidents occurring during ongoing premises operations. Reason C is not correct. Personal and advertising injury exposure covers non-physical offenses like libel or slander, not physical harm from a slip and fall. Question 7. A furniture manufacturer's finished chairs collapse under normal use, causing only damage to the chairs themselves. Under the product's hazard of a CGL policy, how is coverage for this damage treated? A. Coverage applies to repair of the chairs as part of property damage from the product's hazard. B. No coverage since damage to the insured's own product is excluded. C. Coverage applies only if the collapse also damages other property. D. Coverage applies under completed operations rather than the product's hazard. The correct answer is B. The product's hazard insuring agreement covers third-party property damage caused by finished goods, but it explicitly excludes damage to the insured's own product. Reason A is not correct. The product's hazard exclusion removes coverage for damage to the insured's own goods. Reason C is not correct. Coverage for other property does not extend to the insured's product itself, even if other property is unaffected. Reason D is not correct. Completed operations coverage applies to post-service work on a client's premises, not to distribution of finished goods. Question 8. A roofing contractor completes a home installation and vacates the site. 6 weeks later, defective ceiling causes water damage inside the home. Under a CGL policy, which coverage applies to this claim? A. Premises and operations coverage. B. Completed operations coverage. C. Products completed operations aggregate coverage. D. Personal and advertising injury coverage. The correct answer is B. Damage occurring after the work is completed stems from a completed operations exposure, which is covered by the completed operations coverage of the CGL policy. Reason A is not correct. Premises and operations covers incidents during active work at the location, not after completion. Reason C is not correct. The product's completed operations aggregate is a limit, not a coverage part. It does not define the type of coverage. Reason D is not correct. Personal and advertising injury coverage applies to non-physical injury offenses, not property damage from work performance. Question 9. An insured under a CGL policy is charged with negligence and must post a $5,000 bail bond pending trial. Which expense will the insurer pay as a supplementary payment? A. Legal defense fees exceeding the policy retention. B. Bail bond premiums up to the supplementary payment limit. C. Plaintiff's medical expenses. D. Settlement amounts for property damage. The correct answer is B. Supplementary payments under a CGL policy include bail bond premiums up to specified limits, separate from the policy's liability limits. Reason A is not correct. Defense fees are paid under defense costs within the liability limit, not as a supplementary payment. Reason C is not correct. Medical expenses for third parties are covered under medical payments, not supplementary payments. Reason D is not correct. Settlement amounts for property damage are paid under the liability limits, not under supplementary payments. Question 10. In an ISO personal auto policy, which insuring agreement obligates the insurer to pay, on behalf of the insured, sums up to the policy limit that the insured becomes legally obligated to pay as damages for bodily injury or property damage resulting from an auto accident? A. Uninsured motorist coverage. B. Liability coverage. C. Medical payments coverage. D. Collision coverage. The correct answer is B. The liability insuring agreement requires the insurer to pay sums. The insured is legally obligated to pay for third-party bodily injury and property damage, up to policy limits, including defense costs. Reason A is not correct. Uninsured motorist coverage applies when a negligent, underinsured, or uninsured driver causes injury, not for liability assumed by the insured. Reason C is not correct. Medical payments coverage reimburses medical and funeral expenses for insureds and passengers, regardless of fault, not third-party damages. Reason D is not correct. Collision coverage pays for physical damage to the insured's own vehicle when it collides with another object. Question 11. Under an ISO personal auto policy, property damage liability coverage applies to which of the following? A. Legal expenses incurred by the insured in a liability suit. B. Physical harm to another person's body. C. Damage to another party's tangible property. D. Loss of use of the insured's own vehicle. The correct answer is C. Property damage. Liability coverage responds to physical damage or loss of use of another's tangible property resulting from a covered auto accident up to policy limits. Reason A is not correct. Legal expenses for the insured's defense are paid under supplementary payments in the liability insuring agreement, not property damage liability. Reason B is not correct. Physical harm to another person's body is covered under bodily injury liability, not property damage liability. Reason D is not correct. Loss of use of the insured's own vehicle is covered under the insured's own physical damage coverages, not property damage liability. Question 12. Which of the following best describes the primary characteristic of medical payments coverage in an ISO personal auto policy? A. Reimbursement for the insured's legal liability for medical expenses of others. B. Payment of necessary medical and funeral expenses for the insured and passengers, regardless of fault. C. Coverage for lost wages and replacement services after a covered accident. D. Benefits for pain and suffering of third parties injured by the insured. The correct answer is B. Medical payments coverage in the personal auto policy pays for reasonable and necessary medical and funeral expenses for the insured and passengers, irrespective of fault. Reason A is not correct. Legal liability for others' medical expenses is covered under bodily injury liability, not medical payments. Reason C is not correct. Lost wages and replacement services are covered under personal injury protection, not medical payments. Reason D is not correct. Pain and suffering damages are part of liability settlements, not medical payments coverage. Question 13. Compared to medical payments coverage, personal injury protection PIP in an ISO, personal auto policy typically also covers which additional expense? A. Physical damage to the insured's vehicle. B. Lost wages due to injury sustained in a covered accident. C. Legal liability for another party's medical bills. D. Pain and suffering awards. The correct answer is B. Personal injury protection extends no-fault benefits to include lost wages and replacement services, in addition to medical and funeral expenses, whereas medical payments covers only medical and funeral costs. Reason A is not correct. Physical damage to the insured's vehicle is covered under collision or other physical damage coverages, not by PIP. Receiving a major organ transplant. Reason D is not correct. Pain and suffering awards are part of liability settlements and are not covered under PIP. Question 14. The insured sedan is being towed by a repair vendor to a body shop when the tow cable snaps, causing the sedan's front end to collide with a guardrail and sustain significant damage. The insured carries both collision and comprehensive coverages. Under the physical damage insuring agreements, which coverage applies to this loss? A. Comprehensive coverage. B. Towing and labor coverage. C. Specified causes of loss coverage. D. Collision coverage. The correct answer is D. The correct answer is collision coverage, because damage resulting from colliding with an object, including while being towed, falls under the collision insuring agreement. Comprehensive covers non-collision perils. Specified causes are named perils only, and towing and labor only pays for towing expenses, not physical damage. Reason A is not correct. Comprehensive coverage insures against non-collision perils. Theft, vandalism, hail, not collision with a guardrail. Reason B is not correct. Towing and labor coverage reimburses towing costs and labor, not collision damage to the vehicle. Reason C is not correct. Specified causes of loss coverage applies only to named perils listed in the policy, excluding collision events. Question 15. While parked outside her home, an insured's coupe is pummeled by hail, resulting in numerous dents. Moments later, the insured backs out and accidentally scrapes the rear bumper on a concrete post. Under her auto policy with both collision and comprehensive coverages, which loss is covered by the other than collision, comprehensive insuring agreement? A. Corrosion damage to the undercarriage over time. B. Scrape to the rear bumper from backing into the post. C. Dents from the hailstorm. D. Front-end damage from striking a pothole while driving. The correct answer is C. The correct answer is the hail damage, as other than collision, comprehensive coverage insures against non-collision perils, such as weather events. Scrapes from backing into an object and pothole impact are collision losses, and corrosion is a mechanical or wear and tear exclusion. Reason A is not correct. Corrosion is considered wear and tear or mechanical breakdown and is excluded, not covered by comprehensive. Reason B is not correct. Backing into a post is a collision loss and is covered under collision, not comprehensive. Reason D is not correct. Damage from striking a pothole is treated as a collision loss, not an other than collision peril. Question 16. An uninsured hit-and-run driver strikes the insured's sports coupe, causing the driver moderate bodily injuries totaling $15,000 in medical bills. The insured carries liability, medical payments, and uninsured motorist coverage. Which coverage responds to pay the insured's bodily injury claim against the uninsured motorist? A. Uninsured motorist coverage. B. Collision coverage. C. Medical payments coverage. D. Liability coverage. The correct answer is A. The correct answer is uninsured motorist coverage because it pays for bodily injury sustained by the insured when an at-fault motorist has no liability insurance. Medical payments cover medical expenses regardless of fault, but are secondary to uninsured motorist for BI and uninsured situations. Reason B is not correct. Collision coverage applies to physical damage to the vehicle, not bodily injury to the insured. Reason C is not correct. Medical payments coverage reimburses medical expenses regardless of fault, but does not substitute for uninsured motorist benefits in an uninsured driver claim. Reason D is not correct. Liability coverage protects others against the insured's negligence, not injuries to the insured from an uninsured driver. Question 17. A delivery van driver is injured in an accident caused by a motorist whose liability policy limits are $20,000 per person. The driver's own policy includes underinsured motorist UIM coverage of $50,000 per person. After the at-fault insurer pays its $20,000 limit, how much will the driver's UIM coverage pay? A. $0. B. $20,000. C. $30,000. D. $50,000. The correct answer is C. The correct answer is $30,000 because underinsured motorist coverage pays the difference between the insured's per-person UIM limit, $50,000, and the at-fault driver's per-person liability limit, $20,000. Reason A is not correct. No UIM payment would apply only if the at-fault driver's limits equaled or exceeded the insured's UIM limits. Reason B is not correct. This amount equals the at-fault driver's limit, not the difference between policy limits. Reason D is not correct. The full UIM limit is not paid when part of the loss is covered by the at-fault driver's insurer. Question 18. Which statement best describes the exclusive remedy doctrine under workers' compensation laws? A. Employees waive the right to pursue tort claims against employers for covered work-related injuries, and compensation benefits are the sole remedy. B. Employees maintain the right to file negligence lawsuits against employers for any injury that qualifies under workers' compensation benefits. C. Employers may face punitive damages liability in addition to statutory benefits for work-related injuries under the exclusive remedy. D. Employees must exhaust administrative hearings before invoking tort claims for workplace accidents. The correct answer is A. The exclusive remedy doctrine limits injured workers to statutory compensation benefits and bars tort lawsuits against employers, even for negligence, making workers' compensation benefits the only remedy for covered injuries. Reason B is not correct. This is incorrect because employees relinquish the ability to sue employers for negligence once they accept workers' compensation coverage. Reason C is not correct. This is incorrect because punitive damages against employers are precluded by the exclusive remedy doctrine. Reason D is not correct. This is incorrect because the doctrine bars all tort claims regardless of any administrative hearing requirements. Question 19. How do statutory workers' compensation benefits differ from negligence-based recovery? A. Statutory benefits provide predetermined no-fault compensation regardless of employer fault, whereas negligence-based recovery requires proving employer fault and causation. B. Statutory benefits cover punitive damages, while negligence-based recovery prohibits them. C. Statutory benefits require the claimant to prove employer negligence to establish entitlement, while negligence-based recovery is automatic. D. Statutory benefits vary based on damage severity, whereas negligence-based recovery follows a fixed schedule. The correct answer is A. Statutory workers' compensation operates on a no-fault basis with predetermined benefits, whereas negligence-based recovery mandates establishing employer fault and causal connection before obtaining damages. Reason B is not correct. This is incorrect because statutory benefits do not include punitive damages under workers' compensation schemes. Reason C is not correct. This is incorrect because statutory benefits do not require proof of employer negligence. Entitlement is based on the occurrence of a covered injury. Reason D is not correct. This is incorrect because statutory benefits follow a prescribed schedule, while negligence recovery varies with actual damages. Question 20. In workers' compensation law, the term arising out of employment requires that an injury A. Have a causal relationship between the work environment or duties and the harm suffered. B. Occur on the employer's premises during scheduled working hours regardless of cause. C. Result exclusively from the intentional misconduct of a third party. D. Involve proof of employer negligence to establish compensability. The correct answer is A. Compensability for arising out of employment is based on a causal link between the injury and the conditions or duties of employment, not merely location or fault. Reason B is not correct. This is incorrect because location and time alone do not establish a causal employment-related link. Reason C is not correct. This is incorrect because injuries caused by third-party misconduct off the job are not covered unless linked to employment. Reason D is not correct. This is incorrect because employer negligence is not required for compensability under the no-fault system. Enjoyed this practice test? Tap like, hit subscribe, and share it with a classmate. Got a question we should tweak? Comment below. We read them all. Find full practice exam books in the description or at ExamPrep.School.